"We don't serve poor people here." The words sliced through the lobby like a knife. They came out of Madison Blake's mouth with far more venom than she expected, but she didn't pull them back. In fact, she laughed as she said it, leaning over the polished white counter of Pacific Heights Private Bank, the most exclusive wealth management firm in San Francisco, California. The Monday morning sun poured through the glass walls, lighting up marble floors, abstract art on the walls, and people in tailored suits, and right in the middle of all that luxury stood a man in a faded navy hoodie, washed-out jeans, and a mustard-yellow backpack that had clearly seen too many years of use. His baseball cap, also yellow, hid most of his face. His shoulders were slightly hunched, as if the weight of the world, and maybe something even heavier, rested on them. His name was Henry Cole, but nobody there knew that. To Madison, he was just another wrong place, wrong income walk-in. She tapped her manicured fingernail against the counter, impatient, a perfect smile on her face for everyone behind him, everyone who actually looked like money. "Sir," she repeated louder now, so the other clients could hear, "this is a private bank. You can't just walk in here with a backpack and ask for an appointment. We don't serve poor people here." A couple of junior associates standing near the espresso bar snickered. The man in the hoodie lowered his head a little more. He hadn't raised his eyes once since she began speaking, only stood there holding the strap of his backpack, as if that were the only thing keeping him from collapsing. Behind Madison, at a standing desk, Trent Douglas, senior relationship manager, pretended to be busy on his computer, but he was watching everything. Madison always put on a show when someone out of place walked in. He loved it. "Come on, Mads," he called out, not hiding his amusement. "Maybe he just got lost. This isn't the public bank across the street, sir. Minimum deposit here is $1 million. The lobby filled with quiet, cruel laughter. Henry didn't say a word. He just breathed. Slow, deep, like someone trying to hold something inside. Madison rolled her eyes dramatically. "Look," she continued, lowering her voice just enough to stay polite. "If you need basic checking or one of those prepaid cards, there's a regular branch a couple blocks down. This place is for private clients only." Henry finally cleared his throat. His voice came out rough, like it hadn't been used in days. "I just need to talk to someone from management," he said. "It's about an account." Madison almost choked on her own laughter. "An account?" she repeated. "Do you even know what kind of accounts we handle here?" She turned to Trent, raising her eyebrows as if asking for permission to continue the show. Trent shrugged, smirking. "Ask him, Madison," he said. "Ask him how much he thinks he can deposit." She turned back to Henry. "How much are we talking about, sir?" she asked, every syllable coated in sarcasm. $50? $100? Your life savings in cash in that backpack?" Someone behind Henry took out a phone and started recording. Another whispered, "This is insane," but didn't step in. Henry's fingers tightened around the strap of his backpack. For a moment, Madison thought he might finally snap, complain, raise his voice, but he just breathed again. "I just need you to check something in the system," he insisted quietly. "It won't take long." Madison clicked her tongue. "Sir, I've already told you." "Problem here?" The new voice came from the glass doors. Rachel Liu, branch director, had just walked in from a board meeting upstairs. Late 30s, calm face, sharp eyes, the kind of person who rarely got irritated, but when she did, everyone felt it. Madison straightened her posture immediately. "Oh, no problem," she said, sounding suddenly too sweet. "I was just explaining to this gentleman that this is a private institution. He doesn't seem to understand that we don't—" Henry lifted his head for the first time, and that was when everything started to change. Rachel stopped. There was a microsecond where her eyes narrowed, as if something about him poked at an old memory. "Sir," Rachel said, stepping closer to the counter with the kind of respect no one else had shown. "Did you say you needed to talk to management about an account?" Henry nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Just check my name in the system, please." Rachel looked at Madison. "Did you look him up?" she asked, dry and sharp. Madison laughed. Nervous this time. "Rachel, come on. Look at him. He's clearly not our client. I was just directing him to a regular—" "Did you— look, him up?" Rachel repeated, each word separate. The whisper in the room disappeared. Even Trent went silent. Madison felt her face heat up. She turned to the monitor, still with an expression of superiority, but now with a flicker of irritation. "Fine," she muttered. "What's your name, sir?" Henry took a breath. "Henry Cole," he said. "But it might be under Henry A. Cole." She typed with exaggerated annoyance, each keystroke loud, ENRYACOLE. The screen loaded. For a second, nothing changed. Then, the system refreshed. Madison's smile began to die, first at the corners of her mouth, then in her eyes. The air left her chest. Because right there, in front of everyone, a name appeared at the top of the screen in bold capital letters. Henry A. Cole, primary owner, Pacific Heights, private bank. There was a second of absolute silence, then a barely audible, "Oh my God." It came from Trent. Reality had hit. The poor man with the old backpack was the owner of the bank. And Madison had just said, loud enough for half the lobby to hear, "We don't serve poor people here." And now, for the first time since he walked in, Henry Cole lifted his face completely and looked straight into her eyes. Henry didn't raise his voice. He didn't smirk. He didn't humiliate her back. He simply held her gaze with a calmness that made Madison's stomach twist. Not because he was angry, but because he wasn't. People who feel powerless shout. People who feel powerful don't need to. Rachel stepped closer, now fully understanding what was happening and who was standing in her lobby. "Mr. Cole," she said respectfully, "would you like to go to my office?" But Henry shook his head. "No. Let's handle it here." A chill rippled through the room. Madison felt her knees weaken. Trent's smirk evaporated. The junior associates pretended to check emails that didn't exist. Henry placed his backpack gently on the counter. Everyone flinched, because rich people never place things gently. They drop them with confidence. Poor people carry things like they're precious. Henry unzipped the bag. Inside, neatly folded, was a stack of documents, old, yellowed at the edges, protected carefully in plastic sleeves. He pulled out the top one, a deed, a very old one, stamped, signed, original. Rachel recognized it instantly. "Is that?" Henry nodded. "The founding deed. My grandfather built this institution, brick by brick, contract by contract, dollar by dollar." He looked around the lobby. "Everything here exists because of him." Madison swallowed hard. Henry's voice stayed soft, but each word landed with the weight of a hammer. "My grandfather didn't have money when he started. He worked the docks. He delivered newspapers. He cleaned hotel rooms at night." He glanced at Madison. He looked more like me than like any of the people laughing today. The room froze. Henry reached into the bag again and pulled out a thin binder. "My grandfather always kept copies of the original agreements. I inherited them. And when he passed, he left one message for me." He opened the binder, tapped on a handwritten note inside. "Never forget where you came from, and never let this place forget who built it." Rachel exhaled, slow, deep, emotional. It was Madison who broke the silence. She stuttered, voice cracking. Mr. Cole, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Henry raised a hand. Not aggressive, not dismissive, just final. "I didn't come here for an apology." Madison froze. Henry continued. "I came here to see how this place treats people. People who look like me. People who don't come wrapped in designer clothes." He looked at Trent. Long, unreadable. "And I see exactly what I needed to see." Rachel stepped forward, worried now. "Henry, Mr. Cole, please, let's talk privately." But he shook his head again. "No, this wasn't done privately. Not one bit of it." He pointed gently toward the lobby. "So it will be resolved right here." Madison's breath hitched. Trent stiffened. Everyone behind them held still, waiting, bracing, imagining headlines. Henry lifted the binder again, flipping to another old document. "This," he said calmly, "is the agreement that names the rightful primary owner of the bank." Trent blinked. "But—" "Henry, Mr. Cole, the board works for the owners," Henry replied. He wasn't raising his voice, but the words thundered. "Not the other way around." Madison tried to speak again, but her mouth was dry. Henry closed the binder softly. "My grandfather believed every person deserves respect," he said, "whether they walked in with $1 million or with nothing but hope." Then he looked at Madison. Really looked. You don't get to decide who is worthy. Madison felt tears forming. Trent's face turned pale. And then Henry delivered the quiet sentence that sucked all the air out of the room. "Effective immediately. Madison Blake and Trent Douglas are suspended pending a full review." Gasps echoed across the lobby. Rachel closed her eyes, half shocked, half relieved that justice was finally walking through the front door of her bank. Madison's lips trembled. "Suspended?" she whispered. But you can't." Henry leaned in just slightly. "I can." He stepped back. "And I just did." Madison broke. Trent looked like he'd swallowed ice water. Rachel nodded, acknowledging Henry's authority. No one moved. Henry slipped the binder back into his backpack, zipped it, and placed it on his shoulder again. "Now," he said quietly, "I'm ready to talk about the account matter." Rachel nodded with full respect. "Yes, Mr. Cole. Right this way." She led him towards the private offices. Behind them, the entire lobby stood frozen in a storm of shock, guilt, whispers, and disbelief. Madison sank against the counter. Trent stared at the floor, and everyone else understood they had just witnessed something that would spread through the entire financial district before lunchtime. Rachel led Henry down the quiet hallway, past private consultation rooms and glass offices where executives pretended not to stare. Word had already spread through the building faster than a market crash. Everyone knew. Everyone whispered. Everyone felt the floor shifting under their feet. Rachel opened the door to her office, a clean, elegant space overlooking the skyline of San Francisco. She closed it gently behind them. "Mr. Cole," she began, I want to apologize on behalf of the entire staff. What happened out there is unacceptable, and it does not represent—" Henry raised a hand. "Rachel," he said softly, "please. Sit." She obeyed. Henry placed his backpack on the table between them, but for the first time since he'd entered the bank, he looked tired. Not physically. Soul-tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes from years carrying something quietly. Rachel noticed. "Are you all right?" she asked. Henry paused. "I didn't come here today for a show of power," he said, "or to teach anyone a lesson. I came because I need help, real help." Rachel leaned forward, listening. Henry took a slow breath. "It's about my brother," he said. "His name is Samuel. We haven't spoken in 20 years. Rachel's expression softened. Henry continued. "When our parents died, I inherited everything. The land, the documents, the shares. And Samuel inherited nothing except bitterness. He moved away. Disappeared from the family." He hesitated. "Last week, I got a call from a hospital in Sacramento. They told me he's in critical condition." Rachel's eyes widened slightly. Henry kept going. "He never asked me for anything. Not in 20 years. But before he lost consciousness, he told the nurse something." Henry swallowed. He said, "Tell Henry I'm sorry." Silence. Deep. Human. Rachel's voice lowered to a whisper. "Mr. Cole, I'm so sorry." Henry nodded. "I'm not here out of anger," he repeated. "I'm here because before my brother got sick, he transferred his remaining assets into an old trust we both forgot existed. A trust that this bank has managed since before either of us were born." Rachel blinked. "A legacy trust?" Henry nodded. "Yes. Established by my grandfather. For both of us." Rachel stood up slowly. "Oh my God," she murmured. "If that's true, then your brother—" Henry finished the thought. "He's entitled to half of everything." Rachel felt the full weight of the revelation. "And you want to access the trust to help him." Henry nodded once. Yes, he needs surgery. Urgently. And I won't let the last thing he feels in this world be regret. Rachel's throat tightened. She moved to her computer, typed fast, verified credentials, confirmed signatures. Every new screen that loaded made her eyes widen a little more. It's real, she whispered. Your grandfather created it 58 years ago. It has automatic reinvestments tied to the bank's performance. And, Henry, she turned the monitor so he could see, your brother's share alone is worth over $140 million. Henry closed his eyes like the truth hit him physically. He didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. He just breathed. Rachel spoke gently. I'll authorize immediate access. We can wire funds to the hospital within the hour. Henry nodded, eyes still closed. Thank you. Rachel hesitated before speaking again. Henry, can I ask you something? He looked at her. Of course. When you walked into the lobby today, did you know they would treat you like that? Henry didn't answer immediately. Then, very quietly, I hoped they wouldn't. Rachel swallowed hard. But you suspected. Henry nodded once. My grandfather always said, a bank that forgets humility forgets its purpose. Rachel looked down at her hands. And today, Henry added gently, you saw it for yourself. Rachel closed her eyes, ashamed. Not of herself, but of what she represented. Henry's voice softened further. I don't blame you, Rachel. You're one of the few people here who still remembers what this bank was built to be. A tear escaped Rachel's eye. Henry stood, lifted his backpack onto his shoulder. Please make the transfer, he said. I'll head to Sacramento as soon as it's cleared. Rachel nodded. I'll handle everything personally. Henry turned toward the door. But before opening it, he paused. Rachel. Yes? When the review of the staff begins, I trust you to lead it. Rachel inhaled sharply. Me? You saw the truth, Henry said simply. And you didn't look away. A quiet, powerful moment filled the room. Rachel nodded, deeply honored. I won't fail you. Henry opened the door and stepped out into the corridor. Outside, employees pretended to work, but everyone watched him pass. Not with fear, not with awe, with respect. For the first time, the automatic doors of the hospital in Sacramento slid open, releasing the smell of disinfectant, cold air, and urgency. Henry walked through them with steady steps, but his heart was far from steady. In room 214, behind a half-closed curtain, lay a man who once shared his childhood, his struggles, his blood. Samuel Cole, 62, thinner than Henry remembered, face pale from nights that had become too long. Machines beeped quietly. An oxygen tube rested beneath his nose. A nurse adjusted the IV and stepped aside. Are you family? She asked. Henry nodded. I'm his brother. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. He's been waiting. Henry swallowed a tight knot in his throat and walked toward the bed. Samuel opened his eyes slowly, like someone waking up in a world that didn't feel familiar. When his gaze finally settled on Henry, his expression shifted, from confusion to shame. Henry. His voice was weak, cracked, trembling, a voice that belonged to someone fighting both sickness and regret. Henry sat in the chair beside him. For a moment, they just stared at one another, 2 decades of silence filling the space between them. Henry spoke first. You don't have to say anything. Samuel shook his head slowly. No, I do. His eyes glossed with tears. I wasted so many years hating you, blaming you, punishing you, for being the one who stayed, for being the one who inherited what I thought I deserved. Henry placed a hand on the bed rail. I never wanted it alone, he said gently. You were my brother. You still are. Samuel closed his eyes, a tear slipping out. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have said it sooner. I should have said it before. Henry tightened his grip, steady, warm. You're still here, he said, and I'm not going anywhere. Samuel opened his eyes again. But I can't afford the surgery. The hospital said they need the payment up front, and It's taken care of, Henry said softly but firmly. Samuel blinked. What? Henry leaned closer. There's a legacy trust. Grandfather left it for both of us. You have half. Samuel stared at him like he'd misheard. Half. Half. A choked laugh escaped Samuel's throat. After everything I said, everything I did, you'd still help me? Henry brushed the question aside with a shake of his head. You're my brother. That's all that matters. Samuel wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Then, very slowly, he whispered, I thought you hated me. Henry's voice broke for the first time. I never hated you. I missed you. Samuel closed his eyes again, this time not from pain, but from relief. Henry stood, walked to the side of the bed, and gently placed his hand over Samuel's shoulder. I'll be here when you wake up, he said. You're not facing this alone. Samuel nodded weakly. The nurse returned. Mr. Cole, she said. The surgical team is ready for him. Henry squeezed Samuel's arm gently. You're going to be okay. Samuel mustered a faint smile. If I don't, I'm glad you came. You will, Henry insisted, because you're a Cole, and we fight. The nurse rolled the bed toward the hallway. Henry followed beside it until they reached the double doors leading to the operating wing. Samuel lifted a trembling hand. Henry caught it firmly. Thank you, Samuel whispered. Henry nodded once, unable to speak. Then the doors opened, swallowing Samuel and the medical team. Henry stood alone in the hallway, breathing in the sterile air, fighting back a wave of emotion. He had no idea how long the surgery would take. But he knew one thing. He wouldn't leave until his brother came back through those doors alive. He sat in the waiting room, hands clasped, elbows resting on his knees. Time blurred. Hours passed, or minutes. He couldn't tell. Then, finally, Mr. Cole? Henry shot to his feet. A surgeon stood before him, mask lowered, eyes tired but calm. Your brother made it through, the surgeon said. The procedure was successful. Henry exhaled sharply, like someone who had been holding his breath for years. Can I see him? He asked. In a little while, the surgeon replied. But he's stable. He'll need recovery time, but you got here in time. Henry lowered his head. Thank God. When he looked up, the surgeon smiled. You two must be close. Henry felt his throat tighten again. We used to be, he said softly. And we will be again. 2 days later, Samuel was awake, sitting up in his hospital bed with a blanket over his legs and a little more color in his cheeks. Outside the window, the California sun spilled across the buildings, warm and bright, like a second chance. Henry entered the room quietly, carrying 2 coffees. Samuel smiled the moment he saw him. Morning, Henry said softly, handing him a cup. Samuel took it with slightly trembling hands. You stayed, he said. Henry nodded. Of course I stayed. Samuel leaned back against the pillows. I kept thinking, what would have happened if you didn't walk into that bank? If they hadn't checked your name? If you hadn't fought for me? Henry shook his head. You're my brother. I didn't fight for you. I fought with you. Samuel lowered his eyes, grief mixing with gratitude. I wasted so much time, Henry. Henry sat beside him. Then let's not waste what we have left. Samuel nodded, a tear sliding down his cheek. Deal. A soft knock on the door interrupted them. Rachel stepped inside wearing a simple blazer, less formal than usual, more human. She carried a folder under her arm. Henry stood. Rachel, you didn't have to come all the way here. I did, she replied. There's something you should know. She handed him the folder. Inside were printed reports, disciplinary summaries, and handwritten statements from employees. Rachel spoke quietly. We completed the internal investigation. Madison and Trent's suspension is now permanent. And there will be new training, new standards, a new culture. Samuel watched, listening. Rachel continued. I also spoke to the board. They agreed unanimously. You should take your rightful seat as chairman. Henry froze. I didn't want power, he said. Rachel smiled gently. Which is exactly why you deserve it. Henry looked at Samuel, who gave a small approving nod. You can fix what's broken, Samuel said. The same way you fixed us. Henry exhaled slowly, then nodded. All right, I'll do it. Rachel smiled, relieved. I knew you would. She left a moment later, closing the door softly. Henry sat back down. Samuel smirked. Chairman Cole, he said jokingly. Has a nice ring to it. Henry laughed. For the first time in the story, a full, unburdened laugh. It's just a title. Samuel sipped his coffee. No, it's a new beginning. Henry looked at his brother, the man he thought he'd lost forever. Samuel extended a hand. Henry took it. Firm, warm, forgiving. For the first time in 20 years, the Cole brothers were whole again. Henry squeezed Samuel's hand gently. I'm glad you stayed, Samuel whispered. Henry's eyes softened. I'm glad you're still here. Outside, the sun shone brighter, pouring through the window like a blessing. And the man the world thought was poor had just become the richest one in the room. If this story touched you, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what part moved you the most. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories every day. This is Moving Stories U.S. Real moments, real hearts, real transformations.